Hello and welcome to the Communicating Confidently workshop, which discusses the importance of communication and embraces the idea that confident communication is something that can be developed and not something you are inherently good or bad at. Through the introduction and the following activities, learners should be able to identify parts of their communication that may need to be developed and will have started to think about how this may be done.
This slide shows all the partners that Hello Future work with. All of them are committed along with us to help create opportunities and support the young people of Cumbria to help them make well-informed decisions about their future.
Firstly, this workshop aims to explore how confident communication can benefit the learner with their aspirations for the future, including next steps in education and the workplace. As well as this, learners will be able to identify their own communication strengths and areas for improvement. Learners should begin to feel more confident speaking in front of others due to the nature of the activities, as well as gaining an improved understanding of how to utilise their communication skills in further or higher education level interviews.
So, why does good communication matter? Well, firstly, it's really important to express to the group that this is a skill that can be practiced and also developed. This will help them to sell their strengths, especially to universities and potential employers that they are seeking. This is also a really good question to leave open to the rest of the group to get their thoughts and opinions on why they believe that communication is important.
The purpose of this activity is to emphasise how there are more complicated aspects and layers of communication than the surface layer. Each of us interpret things differently, and tone, body language, and expression make up a large proportion of our interpretations. In this image, it is not possible to be conscious of these face-to-face factors. Show the first text message on screen and ask the learners what they think this means or how they would respond. Once you have had a short discussion, show the replies. These may not be what they are expecting, but you can ask the learners what they think would have stopped this mix-up. Answers usually include if they were certain of who the text was from, if the person was clearer in their messaging, and if they were speaking face-to-face. This then aids a smooth transition to the following slide.
Here you will see the quote saying you cannot not communicate. After stating this phrase to the group, you can ask them what they think this means and ask them to elaborate on their thoughts on this. Once you have done this, you can state to the group that this quote was by Paul Watzlawick, who had a theory that even when we are not verbally communicating, that we are always communicating something. You can then ask the group what they think the differences are between verbal and non-verbal communication and how often that they think they use these different ways to communicate with one another. This conversation will lead nicely to the next slide.
Shown on the screen are some percentages. Task your learners with guessing which percentage corresponds with which type of communication. After a short discussion, reveal these percentages. Highlight the importance of body language in communication and how this can allow them to speak with confidence.
So, on this slide, learners will be required to use the workbooks provided. On the skills audit page, learners will be asked to write 3 of their communication strengths and 3 areas of their communication for development. On the PowerPoint slide, you will see a number of examples listed. This is to help the learners get going on some initial thoughts on their personal communication. Depending on the class size, it might be useful to put them into small groups and get them to discuss these on their tables. Depending on the number of practitioners or teachers delivering this session, it would be good to go around on the small group tables and work with these and discuss these further. Make sure that you have some pens and coloured pens ready for the learners to use on these workbooks.
This activity is called Just a Minute. The idea is that learners will have to think on their feet, which could happen if they are asked a question they are not expecting or are not prepared for in an interview. This activity therefore allows them to practice thinking whilst under pressure and adapting things they already know to fit a particular topic. The aim is to speak about a given topic for a minute without hesitating, repeating, or deviating from this topic. In any of these 3 scenarios, an opponent can challenge the other learner and take the subject. On the other hand, points can be gained by continuing speaking once the minute is up, making a correct challenge, or being wrongly interrupted. For full rules, please see the session plan on our website.
For the activity Room 101, Before you split the group into smaller sized teams, make sure that all the learners are aware of the concept of Room 101. This is essentially an activity where the learners will be put into teams and can banish one object that they wish could never be seen again. In regards to splitting the group into teams, it is best if this can be split into two equal sized teams. However, if you feel that this is not appropriate to do so, splitting the group even in sizes of 2s or 3s, 4s or 5s, or larger than this, all of these can work really well. Once the learners have been split into their teams, provide about 5 to 10 minutes of preparation time to plan an argument and counter arguments. This activity is a really good opportunity straight after the skills audit on improving some of the communication skills that have just been noted by the learners. Teams must then debate to a chair. Usually this is best if it's a teacher or practitioner, and this person will decide on what object goes into Room 101. The most persuasive argument wins. At this stage, it is important to note that some of the objects that are raised during this time can be quite controversial with learners. Therefore, I suggest providing a list already made, suggestively written by the teachers or practitioners delivering the session, asking the groups to pick an object, and then providing an argument for this. By doing this, this will counter any controversy that can be raised during this activity.
This activity, Argumentation Station, is used to develop confidence in talking about a subject through encouragement to think aloud and speak freely. Therefore, the aim is not to get the correct answer to the question. Questions such as should graffiti be considered art are chosen from a pack of cards, and then the learner can speak aloud their argument. The aim is to imitate a group interview scenario so that learners can become accustomed to persuasively putting across their points of view without talking over or interrupting their peers. All learners must therefore be encouraged to take part in some way.
Here you will see an image of a job interview taking place, with the question, how would you approach this? This is a really good question to leave open to the group and to get their thoughts and feelings on how they would approach a job interview. It's also good to ask, how do formal settings make the learners feel? This will provide you with the insight on what their maybe nerves are and their considerations when going for job interviews. It's really important to discuss things like the verbal and non-verbal communication that we've discussed in the session so far. Items such as their posture, their professional language, avoiding the use of slang, and speaking clearly and respectfully during a job interview. It's also important to note that this is likely a situation that will occur in the near future for them, whether this is for university, for an apprenticeship, or even a part-time or full-time job. However, it's also important to say to the learners that this is an environment that you should not be overly worried or concerned about. With some good preparation and simple skills, and the learners often been themselves, they will often shine through a job interview scenario. So providing confidence to the learners is really important at this time. It is likely during this that learners will also ask questions maybe on experiences that the teachers or practitioners have had, and to feed these thoughts and feelings back to the group.
This slide and the following one discuss choosing the right style and tone in an interview. The aim is for learners to consider other factors that contribute to the interpretation of what they are saying. The way you put your message across can mean different things depending on the context, the person being addressed, style, and tone of voice used. A popular interview technique is the STAR technique. When asked a question, for example, have you ever planned an event? The learner can lead with the situation. What was the event? Next, state what they were tasked with in this process. What actions did they carry out in order to complete the task they were set, and what was the final result? Next, you can ask what other factors they should be considering when they are in an interview. What are potential positive signals? The factors shown on the slide could be used to prompt this conversation.
Here you will see the question, what do positive signals look like in an interview scenario? On the slide are examples of both positive and negative signals that learners could use during a job interview experience. For the teacher or practitioner delivering this session, it might be worth going over a couple of these points and then getting the learners to feedback either in small groups or as the whole class size, and to discuss these points further. To start rounding off the session, ask the learners to pack up their communication workbooks that they have worked on during the session, and also to keep note of the strengths and areas of development that they have noted in the skills audit. It's also good to suggest to the learners to ask for things like mock interviews and any opportunities that they can to practice and work on their communication skills. Depending on the relationship you have with the learners, it's also good if you have the time and to facilitate mock interviews to do these and also provide feedback to the learners on their skills and areas for development during this. This can help the learners have confidence for their next steps, whatever these may be.
Thank you for listening to our walkthrough of the Communicating Confidently workshop. You will have now discussed the importance of communication and use some activities to help learners identify areas for development and also introduce methods to improve these areas. If you have any questions or queries, please don't hesitate to contact us via email using hellofuture@cumbria.ac.uk. Alternatively, you can reach out to us on any of the social media platforms you can now see on the screen. We hope that you find the session useful, and please let us know how you get on.